Imagine a river, not a rushing mountain stream, but a wide, deep, and silent river moving through a forest at twilight. This is time. It is always moving, always carrying us forward, yet it feels perfectly still when we stop to truly listen to it. We often think of time as a series of sharp numbers on a screen, or the insistent ticking of a clock. But before any of those machines existed, time was simply a flow, a quiet, invisible current that gently shapes everything it touches. If you find the silence of time comforting, and you enjoy these quiet journeys into the wonders of our world, you are warmly invited to subscribe and like this video. It helps keep our shared space peaceful and allows us to continue these nightly explorations together. But for now, simply let those thoughts drift away. Take a moment to settle deeper into your pillows. Feel the soft weight of your blankets and let your shoulders relax, releasing any tension they've carried throughout the day. Notice the rhythm of your breath, the slow, cool intake of air, and the warm, quiet release. There is no rush. In this space, there are no deadlines and no alarms. There is only the gentle, unfolding present. It is interesting to consider what we actually mean when we say the word now. We often think of the present as a razor-thin line, a split second that vanishes as soon as it arrives. However, psychologists have discovered that our experience of now is actually a little bit longer. They call it the psychological present, and for most of us, it lasts about 2 to 3 seconds. This is the window of time that our brains hold on to at once. It is the length of a deep, calming breath or a short phrase of music. Our minds act like a gentle weaver, stitching these 2-second snapshots together so seamlessly that life feels like a continuous, unbroken ribbon. Without this small window of the present, a melody would just be a series of isolated, lonely notes. We wouldn't be able to understand the beginning of a sentence by the time we reached the end. We live our lives in these soft, rolling waves of 3-second moments, always gathering the immediate past and carrying it into the immediate future. For a very long time, this internal, rhythmic feeling of time was the only clock humanity had. We lived by the pulse of our own hearts and the natural cycles of the world around us. But as we began to observe the world more closely, we noticed that the earth itself was trying to tell us a story about the passing hours. We began to look at the ground and the sky, realizing that the light and the dark were the very first tools we could use to map the journey of our days. Before there were gears and springs, there were only the long, reaching shadows cast by the sun. Imagine for a moment that you are standing in a wide, open field thousands of years ago. The air is still, and the only sound is the gentle rustle of tall grass in the breeze. As you stand there, you notice your shadow. In the early morning, it is a long, thin ribbon of dark, stretching far across the dew-covered ground. As the sun climbs higher, that shadow slowly shrinks, tucking itself closer to your feet, until at noon it is merely a small pool of shade beneath you. Then, as the afternoon fades, it begins to grow again, reaching out in the opposite direction, lengthening toward the coming night. These were the very first clocks. Before humans ever thought to build a machine, we learned to read the language of shadows cast by the earth. We realized that the sun's journey across the sky was the most reliable rhythm we had. In ancient Egypt, great stone pillars called obelisks were raised toward the heavens. While they were beautiful monuments, they also served a very practical, quiet purpose. They were gnomons, the earliest parts of a sundial. As the sun moved, the massive shadow of the obelisk would crawl across the ground, marking the passage of the day with silent, monumental grace. It was during this time that the day began to be divided into parts. We often wonder why we use the number 12 for our hours instead of a simpler number like 10. Many historians believe it began with the way early civilizations used their hands to count. If you use your thumb to touch the 3 individual joints on each of the 4 fingers of that same hand, you reach the number 12. This duodecimal system felt natural and harmonious to the ancient world, and so the day was sliced into 12 gentle portions of light. There is a quiet logic in the way our modern clocks move, a logic that was born in these sun-drenched fields. If you were to stand in the northern hemisphere and watch the shadow of a sundial, you would see it move in a specific direction, from the west through the north toward the east. This circular path is the reason why the hands on your clock move the way they do today. We call it clockwise because it follows the ancient celestial path of the sun's shadow. Even now, in our digital world, the ghosts of those ancient shadows are still spinning on our wrists and our walls. There is a profound sense of reliability in the sun. For our ancestors, the movement of the light provided a sense of order and peace. It told them when to plant, when to eat, and when it was time to begin the slow walk back to the safety of their homes. A predictable day is a comforting day. It allows the mind to rest, knowing that the world is following a steady, ancient script. But as the sun eventually begins to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of violet, amber, and deep indigo, the shadows begin to lose their edges. They grow long and faint, eventually merging with the gathering darkness of the evening. When the sun disappears, the sundial falls silent. The gnomon no longer has a story to tell. In those quiet, ancient nights, as the stars began to flicker into view, humans found themselves needing a different kind of rhythm, one that didn't depend on the light of the sky, but on the steady, physical weight of the earth itself. To track the hours of the night, we had to look away from the heavens and toward the slow, rhythmic flow of the elements around us. As the stars began to take their places in the velvet sky, the ancient world turned its attention to the materials of the earth. If the sun could not guide them, perhaps the elements could. They began to measure time not by the movement of celestial bodies, but by the physical weight and flow of water and sand. There is a primal comfort in the way gravity pulls at the world, and our ancestors learned to harness that steady pull to create the first clocks that functioned in the dark. In the quiet of a Babylonian or Egyptian night, you might have heard the soft, rhythmic drip of the clepsydra, a name that translates beautifully to the water thief. It was often a simple vessel, a stone or ceramic bowl with a small, precise hole near the base. As the water trickled out, the level inside would slowly drop, revealing markings on the inner wall that told the passing of the hours. Imagine the stillness of a room where the only sound is that tiny, liquid pulse. There is something deeply soothing about the sound of water moving in the dark, a constant, gentle reminder that time is a fluid thing, moving at its own unhurried pace, even when we are still. As centuries passed, we refined this liquid measurement. Some water clocks became elaborate, using the rising water level to push a float that moved a pointer, or even triggered small bells to chime. But water, for all its beauty, is a sensitive element. In the heat of the day, it might evaporate, and in the deep chill of winter, it could grow sluggish or freeze entirely. This led us to look toward a more grounded element, the earth itself, in the form of sand. The hourglass brought a different kind of peace to the measurement of time. With its narrow waist and falling grains, it offered a visual representation of the future turning into the past. On the great, dark oceans, sailors relied on these glass timers to track their watches or shifts of duty. In the middle of a vast, rolling sea, with no landmarks and no sun to guide them, the hourglass was a small, fragile piece of stability. The sand used in these glasses wasn't just common beach sand. It was often made of finely ground marble, tin, or even pulverized eggshells, boiled in wine and dried in the sun to ensure it was perfectly smooth. The consistency of the grain size was vital. If the grains were uniform, they wouldn't clump or flow at different speeds. Because of the physics of granular materials, the pressure at the bottom of the top bulb remains relatively constant, meaning the sand doesn't speed up as the glass empties. It is a steady, silent cascade, a soft, golden thread of time connecting the two chambers. However, even these elemental clocks had their limitations. A water clock in a humid room might find its flow altered by a single stray droplet of condensation. An hourglass required a human hand to be there at the exact moment the last grain fell, to flip it over and begin the cycle anew. As life became more complex, and as our curiosity grew, we began to search for a way to track time that was independent of the elements, a way to capture time in a cage of bronze and iron. We sought a rhythm that didn't rely on the weather or the thickness of a liquid, but rather on a steady, internal pulse. We were moving toward a world where time would no longer flow like a river, but would instead begin to beat like a heart. There is a specific sound that many of us find comforting in the middle of a quiet night, a sound that feels like the house itself is breathing. It is the steady, rhythmic tick-tock of a mechanical clock. This sound represents a monumental shift in how we experience our lives. For the first time, we moved away from the silent, fluid flow of water and sand, and into a world where time had a pulse. The heart of this new machine was a clever invention called the escapement. If you were to look inside a traditional clock, you would see a small, anchor-shaped piece of metal rocking back and forth. This piece catches and releases a gear, tooth by tooth. Each tick is the sound of the machine stopping time for a fraction of a second, and each tock is the sound of it letting time move forward again. It is a controlled release of energy, turning the raw power of a falling weight or a coiled spring into a gentle, predictable cadence. In the mid-1600s, a Dutch scientist named Christian Huygens realized that a swinging weight, a pendulum, could regulate this movement with incredible precision. He discovered that the time it takes for a pendulum to swing back and forth depends almost entirely on its length, rather than how heavy it is or how wide the swing might be. If you want a pendulum to swing exactly once every second, it must be a very specific length, roughly 39 inches, or about 1 meter. When you hear that steady rhythm in a quiet room, you are listening to the laws of physics manifesting as music. There is something deeply reassuring about a mechanical clock. It doesn't rush, and it doesn't hesitate. It is a tiny, persistent heartbeat that mirrors our own resting pulse. For centuries, this sound was the backdrop of the home, a reminder that even in the stillness of the night, there is a reliable order to the world. To provide the energy for this heartbeat, clocks used a mainspring, a long, thin ribbon of steel coiled tightly inside a drum. As the spring slowly unwinds, it pushes the gears. It is a beautiful metaphor for our own energy. We wind ourselves up during the day, and as we rest, that tension slowly releases, moving us steadily toward tomorrow. The invention of these machines changed our relationship with the world. We began to think of time not just as a season or a shadow, but as a series of identical, measurable beats. We learned to synchronize our lives to the rhythm of the machine. But as precise as these gears and springs became, they were ultimately just an imitation. We were building these clocks in our own image, trying to replicate a much older, much more ancient rhythm that was already beating inside us. Even as you lie here perfectly still, there are thousands of tiny invisible clocks ticking away within your own body. You are not just a passenger in time. You are a living, breathing clock yourself. Every cell, every organ, and every strand of DNA follows a tempo that was set long before the first gear was ever forged. As we leave the world of brass and pendulums behind, we begin to realize that the most accurate and beautiful timekeepers in the universe aren't made of metal at all. They are made of life. Every living thing, from the smallest blade of grass to the most complex human mind, carries a silent, internal metronome. It is a rhythm that was written into our biology long before we ever learned to measure the hours. Scientists call these circadian rhythms, a name derived from the Latin words circa, meaning about, and diem, meaning day. These rhythms are the ancient invisible gears that ensure our bodies are in perfect harmony with the turning of the earth. Deep within your brain, nestled in a region called the hypothalamus, sits a tiny cluster of about 20,000 nerve cells. This is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN. Despite being no larger than a grain of rice, it serves as your master clock. It is the conductor of your body's entire biological symphony, sending out signals to regulate your body temperature, your hunger, your hormones, and, most importantly, your desire to sleep. This internal clock is incredibly persistent. Even if you were to stay in a room with no windows and no clocks, your body would still follow a cycle of roughly 24 hours. However, the SCN is not a closed system. It is constantly listening to the world outside. It is particularly sensitive to light. When the first blue light of the morning sun hits the back of your eyes, it travels along a special pathway to the SCN, acting like a reset button. It tells your brain that a new day has begun, suppressing the production of sleep hormones and preparing your systems for the activity ahead. As you move through the day, this clock tracks the passing hours, gradually shifting your internal chemistry. It is a beautiful, self-regulating loop, but as the sun begins to set, and the vibrant blues of the sky give way to the softer, warmer oranges, and then the deep indigo of twilight, the SCN notices the absence of light. It begins to whisper to the rest of your body that it is time to slow down. Take a moment now to notice how your body responds to this ancient signal. Your breathing is naturally becoming slower and more rhythmic. Your heart rate is gently dipping. There is a profound comfort in knowing that you don't have to tell your body how to rest. It already knows. It has been practicing this transition every day of your life. You are simply following a path that has been cleared for you by millions of years of evolution. The pressure of the day is lifting, replaced by the heavy, pleasant weight of relaxation. The SCN is now signaling for the release of melatonin, a gentle hormone that acts like a blanket for your brain, tucking away the sharp edges of thought and inviting you to drift. Your internal master clock is handing over the reins to a different part of your consciousness. As the world of wakefulness recedes, the rigid linear time of the waking world begins to soften and blur. The steady tick-tock of the mechanical clock fades into the background, making room for a different kind of experience. We are about to cross a threshold where the rules of time no longer apply in the same way. The threshold into the land of dreams. As you settle into this state of drifting, you might notice that the rigid structure of time begins to feel elastic. In the waking world, a minute is always 60 seconds, measured by the cold precision of a clock. But in the world of sleep, time is no longer a ruler. It is more like a shimmering reflection on the surface of water, expanding and contracting with every ripple of your thoughts. Have you ever woken up from a dream that felt like it lasted for days, only to find that you have been napping for only 20 minutes? This distortion is one of the most fascinating mysteries of the human mind. During REM sleep, the stage where our most vivid dreams occur, our perception of time becomes beautifully fluid. There is a concept often called the time expansion theory, which explores why the narratives of our dreams feel so much longer than the time we spend in bed. Interestingly, researchers have studied this using lucid dreamers, people who can become aware they are dreaming while the dream is still happening. These dreamers were asked to signal the researchers using specific eye movements while they performed tasks in their sleep, like counting to 10 or walking a short distance. The results were surprising. They found that for physical actions, dream time actually matches real time quite closely. Counting to 10 in a dream takes almost exactly the same amount of time as it does while you are awake. This suggests that your brain's internal metronome stays steady, even when your eyes are closed. The reason a dream feels like an epic journey is because the brain is a master editor. Much like a film, a dream can jump from one scene to another, skipping the hours of travel or the quiet moments of waiting. Your mind provides the emotional weight of a long experience without needing the actual hours to pass. It is a shortcut through time, allowing you to experience a lifetime of feeling in a single hour of rest. While you are lost in these stories, your brain is also performing a vital chronological task. It acts as a quiet, dedicated archivist, sorting through the memories of your day. It takes the scattered fragments, the conversation you had, a song you heard, the way the light hit a window, and begins to weave them into the long-term tapestry of your life. This processing happens in an orderly, chronological fashion, helping to maintain your sense of self. It is a comforting thought. While you are letting go of the day, your mind is carefully preserving the parts of it that matter, ensuring that when you wake, your history is intact and your story makes sense. Then there is the deep, dreamless sleep, the periods where time seems to vanish entirely. This is the closest we come to true timelessness. You might close your eyes in the darkness of the night and, in what feels like the space between two breaths, find the room filled with the soft light of morning. In these deep stages of rest, the brain's activity slows to long, rhythmic waves, and the conscious observer of time steps away. It is a profound reset. a gap in the continuity of the universe that allows you to emerge refreshed, as if you have stepped outside of time to catch your breath. But as we consider how our own minds stretch and compress the seconds, we begin to realize that our human perspective is just one of many. The way you perceive this very moment, as you lie here in the quiet, is unique to your own biology. If we were to look through the eyes of the creatures we share this world with, we would find that the rhythm of life moves at a completely different tempo. Just as our dreams distort the clock, the animal kingdom lives in a world where a single second can be a lifetime, or a century can pass in a blink. Imagine for a moment that you are a common housefly resting on a sunlit windowsill. To a human, your movements are a frantic, nervous blur, almost too fast for the eye to follow. But from your perspective, the world is moving in a beautiful, syrupy slow motion. When a human hand reaches out to swat at you, it doesn't appear as a sudden strike. To your eyes, that hand is moving with the agonizing slowness of a drifting cloud. You have ample time to see it coming, to adjust your wings, and to lift off into the safety of the air before the hand has even covered half the distance. This difference in perception is due to something scientists call the flicker fusion frequency. It is essentially the frame rate of the brain. Just as a film is made of many still images played in rapid succession to create the illusion of movement, our eyes and brains take snapshots of the world. For humans, this happens at a rate that makes a television screen appear as a smooth, continuous image. But for the fly, their camera is much faster. They can process up to 4 times more visual information every second than we can. To them, our reality is a movie played at a fraction of its intended speed. Their now is packed with more detail, more moments, and more frames of life. As you lie here, breathing slowly, it is interesting to consider that there is no single, objective speed at which life is lived. Small animals with high metabolic rates tend to experience time as though it is stretched out. For a hummingbird, whose heart beats over 1,000 times a minute, a single hour might contain an entire afternoon's worth of experience. They live in the high-frequency notes of the universe, where every second is a vast landscape of opportunity. But then we can turn our attention to the cold, deep waters of the North Atlantic, where the Greenland shark glides through the darkness. This creature lives in a world of profound stillness and near-freezing temperatures. Its heart may beat only once every few seconds. Its movements are deliberate, rhythmic, and incredibly slow. Because its metabolism is so quiet, its internal clock moves at a pace that is almost incomprehensible to us. A Greenland shark might not reach its version of adulthood until it is 150 years old. Some of these silent wanderers are over 400 years old, meaning there are sharks swimming today that were born before the arrival of the first settlers in the Americas. To the Greenland shark, the flicker of a human life might seem like the brief flash of a firefly in the woods, a sudden spark that vanishes as quickly as it appeared. In their world, time is a long, deep shadow that stretches across centuries. They are the elders of the ocean, witnessing the slow shift of currents and the gradual cooling of the seas. Their lives measured not in days or months, but in the slow passing of generations. Whether it is the frantic second of the fly or the centuries-long year of the shark, these are all just different ways of observing the same universe. Fast and slow are not properties of time itself. but rather the settings of the biological clocks we carry within us. It is a comforting realization that time can be as expansive or as concentrated as we need it to be. When we are resting, when we allow our heart rates to drop and our minds to go quiet, we are stepping closer to that slow, enduring rhythm of the shark. We are letting the world move on without us for a while, sinking into a pace where the pressure of the clock fades away. As we move our focus away from the individual lives of animals, we begin to see that even the great physical bodies of our world have their own rhythms. Just as the fly and the shark have their tempos, the very ground beneath us and the air around us are governed by a clock much larger and older than any living thing. We zoom out now, away from the windowsills and the deep ocean trenches, looking up toward the horizon where the curve of the earth meets the stars. The planet itself is a clock, a massive rotating sphere of rock and water, turning with a steady grace that defines every day we have ever known.
But even this great clock, which seems so constant and eternal, has its own subtle changes, moving with a rhythm that has been slowly, gently shifting since the very beginning of the world. Imagine the Earth not just as a home, but as a massive celestial timepiece, spinning with a rhythmic grace that has lasted for billions of years. To us, the length of a day feels like a fixed constant, an unshakable law of nature. But if we look closely enough, we find that this great planetary clock is very gradually winding down. The Earth is spinning a tiny bit slower with every passing century, its rotation moderated by a gentle, invisible force. This slowing is primarily caused by the Moon. As our silent companion orbits our world, its gravity pulls on our oceans, creating the tides that rise and fall along our coastlines. This movement of water creates a kind of tidal friction, a subtle, persistent drag against the spinning of the Earth. It is as if the Moon is a soft hand resting lightly on the edge of a spinning wheel, very slowly bringing it toward a more leisurely pace. This interaction is a quiet conversation between two celestial bodies, a tug-of-war that has been playing out across the vacuum of space for eons. If we could travel back into the distant past, we would find a world where the days were much shorter and the rhythm of life was more hurried. During the era of the dinosaurs, roughly 70 million years ago, the Earth was spinning significantly faster. A day back then lasted only about 21 hours. The sun rose and set with a more rapid tempo, and the year was comprised of many more individual days than we experience now. To the creatures of that ancient time, the world moved to a different beat entirely. Since then, the Earth has continued its slow deceleration, stretching the minutes and hours until we arrived at the 24-hour cycle we recognize today. Even now, in our age of high precision, we have to account for this gradual change. Because our atomic clocks are so incredibly accurate, they sometimes get slightly ahead of the Earth's actual physical rotation. To keep our human systems in perfect sync with the position of the sun and the stars, scientists occasionally add what is known as a leap second. It is a tiny, quiet adjustment, a single extra heartbeat added to the global clock to ensure that our technology remains harmonized with the physical reality of our planet's journey. It is a reminder that we are still governed by the movements of the cosmos, no matter how advanced our tools become. Take a moment now to visualize the Earth from far above. See it as a beautiful, glowing sphere of deep blues and swirling whites, suspended in the dark, silent velvet of space. It turns with such immense, quiet power that we cannot feel the movement.
yet it is always there, carrying us through the shadows and back into the light. Feel the stability of that rotation. There is no rush, no urgency. The planet has all the time in the universe to turn, and so do you. You are part of this grand, slow movement, cradled by the momentum of the world. As the Earth spins, it does more than just mark the passing of hours. It records the passage of ages within its very structure. The slowing of the spin is just one small part of a much larger story written into the physical makeup of our world. When we look down at the ground beneath us, we aren't just looking at soil and stone. We are looking at the pages of a vast, ancient book. The rotation of the planet has carried it through eons of change, and those eons have left behind a physical record that stretches back far beyond the memory of any living thing. We are moving now from the rhythm of the day into the immense, silent depths of what scientists call deep time, a scale of history so vast and enduring that it makes the 400-year life of a Greenland shark seem like a single fleeting breath in the night. If you were to stand at the edge of a great canyon, perhaps as the sun begins to set and the shadows stretch long and thin across the rock faces, you would see something more than just a landscape. You would be looking at a giant clock made of stone. Each layer of rock, stacked one upon the other in beautiful ribbons of ochre, slate, and rust, represents a different chapter in the life of our planet. This is the essence of stratigraphy, the study of these layers, or strata. It is the realization that the ground beneath your feet is a chronological archive where the oldest memories are buried deepest and the newest stories are written on the surface. In this realm of deep time, we do not count the passing moments in minutes or hours, but in millions and hundreds of millions of years. To the Earth, a million years is a relatively short interval, a brief season in a much longer life. When you look at a band of red sandstone or a vein of dark limestone, you are looking at a specific environment from a distant past, a seabed that dried up, a forest that was buried by silt, or a desert that was swept by ancient winds. These layers are remarkably consistent, allowing us to trace the history of life itself, from the first tiny organisms to the rise and fall of vast empires of flora and fauna. Yet even in this massive stone clock, there are moments of silence. Geologists often speak of the Great Unconformity, a mysterious gap in the rock record where hundreds of millions of years of history seem to have simply vanished. In some places, like the Grand Canyon, you can touch a line where rock that is 500 million years old sits directly on top of rock that is over 1 billion years old. The time in between was eroded away by ancient rains and winds before the next layers could be deposited. It is a reminder that time is not just about what is kept, but also about what is lost to the slow, patient processes of the Earth. It is a quiet, profound mystery that sits right beneath the surface of the world's grandest landscapes. To help grasp the scale of this history, imagine if we were to compress the entire 4.5 billion year history of the Earth into a single 24-hour day. In this scale, the Earth forms at midnight. For many hours, the planet is quiet, slowly cooling and forming its first oceans. Life doesn't even begin to crawl onto dry land until well after 9 o'clock in the evening. The dinosaurs thrive for a short while and disappear around 11:40 p.m. And humans? All of our recorded history, every civilization we have ever built, and every life ever lived would occupy only the final few seconds before the clock strikes midnight again. There is a strange, deep comfort in this perspective. It reminds us that the world is vast, stable, and incredibly enduring. The Earth is not in a hurry. It has seen countless changes, and it continues to move forward with a steady, unshakable pace. You are resting upon a foundation of unimaginable history, a quiet witness to the passage of eons. As we settle into the stillness of the present, we can appreciate the permanence of the ground beneath us. But while the earth records its history in the quiet depths of the stone, we have always looked upward to find a way to organize our own brief and precious days. The layers of the earth tell us where we have been, but it is the light from the sky that tells us where we are in the cycle of the year. From the vast, silent depths of geological time, we now turn our gaze toward the heavens, where the stars and the moon provide the architecture for our calendars and the gentle rhythm of our seasons. If you look up at the night sky, you see the same stars that our ancestors watched thousands of years ago. To them, the sky was a giant, luminous clock, a way to make sense of the changing seasons and the passage of their lives. Our calendars, the very way we divide our years and months, are a beautiful, sometimes messy attempt to synchronize our lives with the movements of the heavens. It is a structure built out of light and shadow, designed to bring order to the vastness of time. Take a moment to imagine those ancient observers sitting in the quiet of the night, tracing the slow arc of the moon and the stars, finding a sense of peace in the predictable patterns above. The year itself is dictated by the Earth's long, silent journey around the sun. It takes roughly 365 and a quarter days to complete one circuit. That small fraction, that extra quarter of a day, is why we have leap years. Without that single extra day every 4 years, our seasons would slowly drift. Over the course of a few centuries, the Northern Hemisphere would find itself celebrating the winter solstice in the heat of July. The leap year is our way of gently nudging the calendar back into alignment with the stars, a small correction to keep our world in balance. But while the year is defined by the sun, our months were originally born from the moon. The word month itself is a linguistic relative of the word moon. A complete cycle of lunar phases, from one new moon to the next, takes about 29.5 days. This is where the challenge began for ancient astronomers. 12 lunar months add up to only 354 days, leaving a gap of 11 days between the lunar year and the solar year. Our modern calendar is the result of centuries of adjustments, stretching and pulling the months so they fit within the sun's cycle, creating the irregular pattern of 30 and 31 days we know today. It is a human tapestry woven over the cycles of nature. And then there is February, the shortest and most peculiar of our months. Its brevity is a relic of ancient Roman history. Originally, the Roman calendar had only 10 months, beginning in March and ending in December. The winter period was simply left uncounted, a time of quiet waiting. When January and February were eventually added to fill the gap, February was given the remaining 28 days. It was considered a month of purification and transition, a quiet bridge between the old year and the new. Later, history suggests that days were taken from February to bolster the months of July and August, named for Julius Caesar and Augustus, ensuring those months were long and grand. February remains small, a humble and quiet pause in the middle of the winter. Even the 7-day week, a rhythm so deeply ingrained in our lives, has its roots in the ancient sky. Early observers tracked 7 wandering celestial bodies that moved differently than the fixed stars: the Sun, the Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. Each day of the week was dedicated to one of these bodies. In many languages, these connections are still clear: Monday for the Moon, Saturday for Saturn, and Sunday for the Sun. It is a 7-beat rhythm that has persisted for millennia, a human-made heartbeat imposed upon the natural world to give us a sense of routine and rest. There is a profound comfort in knowing that our daily schedules are anchored to the dance of the planets. We have taken the drifting motion of the universe and woven it into a predictable grid, a map that helps us navigate our way through the years. We find safety in the now, the tomorrow, and the next year. But as we have learned to measure these cycles with greater and greater precision, we have discovered that time is even more mysterious than the ancients ever imagined. We are now moving away from the visible architecture of the stars and toward the invisible fabric of the universe itself, where time behaves in ways that challenge everything we thought we knew. Imagine for a moment that time is not a solid, unchanging road that we walk upon. Instead, try to visualize it as a soft, invisible fabric, a gentle mesh that stretches and curves around every star, every planet, and even your own body. For a long time, we believed that time was absolute, ticking away at the exact same rate for everyone, everywhere in the universe. We thought of it as a cosmic metronome that never faltered. But we now know that time is elastic. It can stretch, it can compress, and it can even warp depending on where you are and how you move. This discovery came from Albert Einstein, who realized that space and time are not separate things, but are woven together into a single, beautiful fabric called space-time. He found that gravity, the same gentle force that keeps us tucked safely in our beds, actually has the power to slow time down. The stronger the gravity, the slower the clock ticks. It is a strange and comforting thought that time itself is slightly heavier and slower near the surface of the Earth, where the ground supports us. If you were to take 2 perfectly synchronized clocks and place one at the very base of a mountain and the other at its highest, loneliest peak, they would no longer match after a while. The clock at the bottom, closer to the massive weight of the Earth, would tick a tiny bit slower than the clock in the thin, high air. To our human senses, this difference is completely invisible. It is measured in tiny billionths of a second. But it reminds us that the universe is not a rigid machine, but a fluid and responsive place. The higher we go, the more we lean into the future, as time moves just a fraction faster in the quiet heights. We see this reality every day in the technology that guides us through the world. High above the clouds, GPS satellites are circling the Earth at incredible speeds. Because they are further away from the Earth's gravity, time for those satellites moves slightly faster than it does for us on the ground. It is only by a few dozen microseconds a day, but if the computers on those satellites didn't adjust for this slight stretch in time, the maps on our phones would become useless within minutes. They would lose their accuracy by miles. Every time you find your way home using a digital map, you are using a tool that understands the secret, stretching nature of time. As you lie here, take a slow, deep breath. Feel the weight of your body against the mattress. Even though time might be stretching and curving in the far reaches of space or at the tops of distant mountains, here, in this room, we are all traveling forward together at the same gentle pace. There is no need to hurry, and there is no need to catch up. In the grand fabric of the universe, you are drifting at a speed that is perfectly suited for rest. The now that you are experiencing is yours to keep, a steady and calm rhythm. While we have learned that time can change depending on where we are or how fast we move, we have also found ways to measure it with a precision that is almost impossible to imagine. To find the true, unwavering heartbeat of a second, we must look away from the stars and the mountains and look deep inside the smallest building blocks of our world. We are moving from the vastness of space into the silent, vibrating world of the atom, where the smallest slices of time are measured with a rhythmic perfection that never skips a beat. Imagine for a moment a clock that doesn't have a face, or hands, or even a single moving gear. To find the most perfect rhythm in existence, we have to look far beyond what the human eye can see. We have to look into the very heart of matter itself. In the quietest, most controlled laboratories on Earth, scientists don't rely on the swing of a pendulum or the vibration of a quartz crystal anymore. Instead, they listen to the heartbeat of an atom. Specifically, they look at the cesium-133 atom. Inside this tiny particle, there is a natural, unchanging frequency, a kind of internal shiver that happens at a speed we can barely comprehend. In the world of modern science, a single second is no longer just a fraction of a day or a simple heartbeat. It is officially defined as the time it takes for a cesium atom to vibrate exactly 9,192,631,770 times. Try to picture that number as a soft, rhythmic hum. It is a constant, unwavering pulse that exists everywhere in the universe. Whether it is in the cold vacuum of space or right here in the warmth of your room, those atoms are dancing at that exact same rate. Because this pulse is so reliable, atomic clocks are the most accurate instruments ever built by human hands. They are so precise that if you had started an atomic clock at the very beginning of the universe, 14 billion years ago, it would be off by less than a single second today. There is something deeply comforting about that level of precision. It means that beneath the noise and chaos of the world, there is a fundamental order. There is a true time that remains steady, even when our own lives feel hurried or unpredictable. It is a silent, golden thread that runs through everything. But science hasn't stopped there. We are now developing even more precise tools called optical lattice clocks. These use lasers to trap thousands of atoms in a grid of light, measuring their vibrations even more closely. These clocks are so sensitive that they can actually detect time moving at different speeds if you lift the clock just a few inches higher off the ground. At this level of detail, time is no longer a flat, simple line. It becomes a shimmering, living landscape where every tiny movement and every change in height affects the flow of the universe. When we look at time in these incredibly small slices, billionths and trillionths of a second, it almost starts to lose its meaning as a measurement of speed. At that level, time feels less like a racing arrow and more like a vast, still ocean. It is so steady and so constant that it starts to feel like silence. It is the foundation upon which the rest of our reality is built. A quiet hum that supports every breath we take. As you let your mind drift, you might realize that while we use these silent atoms to measure time with mathematical perfection, the living world around us has its own way of keeping track. We don't always need lasers and vacuum chambers to know where we are in the day. Even without a single machine, the natural world knows exactly when to wake up and when to rest. Just as the atoms shiver in their invisible dance, the roots, petals, and leaves of the world are following a clockwork of their own, one that is written in the gentle language of light and the changing of the seasons. Imagine a garden in the quiet hours just before dawn. Long before the first ray of golden light touches the soil, the plants already know it is coming. They don't have gears, vibrating atoms, or digital displays, but they possess watches made of delicate light-sensitive proteins and complex chemical chains. These internal mechanisms act like tiny biological sandglasses, measuring the duration of darkness and the arrival of the morning with startling accuracy. In the mid-18th century, the famous botanist Carl Linnaeus became so fascinated by this rhythmic precision that he proposed a concept called the horologium florae, or the flower clock. He realized that if you were to plant specific species of flowers in a circular bed, you could tell the time of day simply by observing which petals were unfolding and which were tucked away in sleep. In this living clock, the day begins long before we wake. At 3 or 4 in the morning, while the world is still wrapped in deep blue shadows, the goat's beard flower begins to open its yellow petals. By 5, the wild chicory joins it. As the morning progresses and the dew begins to evaporate, the Star of Bethlehem waits until exactly 11 o'clock to reveal its bright white blooms. And then, as the heat of the afternoon begins to fade, the process reverses. Some flowers, like the evening primrose or the night-blooming cereus, wait until the sun has dipped below the horizon to breathe their scent into the cooling air, inviting the night moths to visit under the silver light of the moon. This behavior isn't just a simple reaction to the sun's warmth. It is governed by proteins called phytochromes and cryptochromes that allow the plant to see the quality and duration of light. If you were to place these plants in a room of total, unceasing darkness, they would continue to open and close their petals for several days, following the phantom memory of the sun. It is a deep, cellular knowledge of the Earth's rotation, a rhythmic pulse that connects the smallest blade of grass to the spinning of our planet. This same biological clockwork tells the great oak trees and the slender maples when to prepare for the long sleep of winter. They don't just wait for the first frost to arrive. They are much more patient and precise than that. They measure the photoperiod, the specific dwindling length of the day. As the hours of light begin to shrink in the autumn, the trees sense the shift in the fabric of time. They begin to pull their nutrients back into their trunks, sealing off their leaves and letting them drift to the ground in a quiet, colorful surrender. There is a profound peace in the image of a garden waking up and falling asleep in perfect, silent sequence. It is a slow-motion clock, pulsing with the seasons and the hours, reminding us that we are part of a living system that knows exactly when to grow and when to rest. But as we watch these cycles of opening and closing, of blooming and falling, we might notice something curious about the nature of time itself. While the flowers repeat their patterns day after day, and the seasons return year after year, the world they live in is always moving forward. The same blossom never opens twice in quite the same way, and the water in the garden stream never flows backward. This brings us to one of the most beautiful and mysterious concepts in all of physics. If the universe is so full of rhythms and cycles that seem to repeat, why does time itself only ever travel in one direction? Why does it feel like an arrow shot from a bow, traveling steadily away from the past and toward a future we have yet to reach? Take a slow, deep breath and consider the strange asymmetry of your own mind. You can look back and see the path you've walked, the faces of old friends, the smell of rain on a summer afternoon, the quiet moments of your childhood. These memories are like a library you can visit whenever you wish. But when you turn your gaze toward tomorrow, or next year, the view is different. The future is a soft, unformed mist. We can remember the past, but we cannot remember the future. This simple fact is the signature of the arrow of time. In the world of physics, most of the fundamental laws work just as well backward as they do forward. If you were to watch a video of two billiard balls colliding and then play it in reverse, the motion would still look perfectly natural. But in our daily lives, we know that time has a preferred direction. We see a drop of ink spread through a glass of clear water until the liquid is a uniform pale blue. We never see that blue ink pull itself back together into a single concentrated droplet. This persistent forward motion is governed by a concept called entropy, which is often described as the second law of thermodynamics. You might think of entropy as the universe's natural tendency to move from a state of concentrated order to a state of gentle, spread-out balance. Imagine a beautifully carved ice sculpture standing in a warm room. The ice is highly organized, its molecules locked into a specific, intricate shape. But as time passes, the ice melts. The molecules lose their rigid structure and spread out across the floor in a simple pool of water. The order has decreased, and the entropy has increased. The universe began in a state of remarkably low entropy, a moment of incredible order and potential. Since then, for billions of years, that order has been slowly unfolding, like a tightly wound spring gradually releasing its tension. Every star that shines and every heart that beats is part of this grand process of energy finding its way toward equilibrium. Think of a simple egg resting on a counter. To make that egg, a complex biological system worked with incredible precision to gather nutrients and build a shell. It is a small miracle of order. If that egg falls and breaks, the shell shatters into 100 unique pieces and the yolk spills out. It takes only a fraction of a second to move from order to a jumble. But no matter how long you wait, those shards will never gather themselves up and fuse back into a whole egg. The arrow of time only points one way, toward the spreading, the softening, and the settling. There is a quiet beauty in this. It means that every moment is truly unique, a fleeting arrangement of matter and energy that will never happen in exactly the same way again. The universe isn't falling apart. It is simply relaxing. It is moving toward a state of perfect, uniform peace, where all the differences in temperature and pressure eventually smooth out into a calm, still horizon. As you lie here now, your own body is following this gentle rhythm. Your breath moves in and out, distributing oxygen and warmth, participating in the slow, steady flow of entropy. You are part of the arrow's flight, moving gracefully from the activities of the day toward the stillness of the night. The tension of the hours is beginning to dissolve, just like that drop of ink in water, spreading out until it becomes part of a larger, quieter whole.
We are traveling toward a place where the ticking of the clock begins to fade, where the distinctions between before and after become less important than the simple, peaceful reality of now. We are approaching the edge of a great, silent ocean, where the arrow of time finally finds its mark and comes to a rest in the velvet darkness. We have traveled through the history of the stars, the gears of the clock, and the rhythms of our own hearts. Now, we arrive at a place where time no longer matters, a place of pure stillness. In our daily lives, we often feel like we are chasing time, or that time is chasing us. But here, in the quiet of the night, we can finally step off that path. We reach a destination where the ticking fades and the concept of later simply ceases to exist. Scientists sometimes speak of a very distant future known as the heat death of the universe. While the name sounds dramatic, it is perhaps better described as the Great Equilibrium. It is a time, trillions upon trillions of years from now, when every star has finished its work and every galaxy has settled. The universe becomes a uniform, gentle temperature. There are no more clocks because there are no more changes to measure. It is the ultimate peaceful sleep of the cosmos, a state of perfect, unchanging rest where the universe finally breathes out and remains in a quiet, dark embrace. It is the final resolution of all tension, a silent horizon that stretches on forever. There is another way to look at time, a theory in physics called eternalism. It suggests that time is like a vast frozen landscape or a block universe. In this view, the past isn't gone and the future isn't waiting. Instead, every moment that has ever happened and every moment that will ever happen exists simultaneously, like a single magnificent map. Your childhood, this very moment of rest, and the distant future are all equally real, etched forever into the fabric of reality. You are not losing time as you sleep. You are simply resting within a beautiful, permanent architecture where every happy memory and every peaceful night is preserved forever. Even when we look at the smallest possible scales, time reveals its mysteries. There is a unit called the Planck time, the shortest interval of time that could ever possibly exist. It is so unimaginably small that there are more Planck units in a single second than there have been seconds since the beginning of the universe. At this level, the smooth flow of time might break down into tiny, shimmering pulses. It reminds us that even the most solid-seeming moments are built from a delicate, invisible vibration, a microscopic rhythm that underlines everything we know. But for now, you can let go of the scales of the universe and the precision of the atoms. Your work with time is done for today. The schedules, the deadlines, and the appointments of the waking world are all drifting away, dissolving like mist over a quiet lake. There is no need to count the minutes or wonder about the hour. In this space, you are timeless. You are no longer a passenger on a clock. You are simply a part of the stillness. Take a slow, deep breath in and let it out. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the bed, supported by the earth that has been turning for billions of years. You are safe. You are at peace.
The rhythm of your breath is the only clock you need now. A slow, steady tide that carries you further and further away from the shore of the waking world. With every exhale, let go of one more thought, one more fragment of the day, until there is nothing left but the soft, velvet darkness. The stars will continue their slow, ancient dance across the sky. The earth will keep its silent vigil as it rotates through the deep, and the fabric of space-time will hold you in its gentle, unwavering grip. You are a part of the universe's long, beautiful story. And right now, the story is one of profound rest. Sleep now, drifting into that deep, timeless sea where every moment is a soft, quiet light. The journey is complete, and the night is yours. Sleep deeply, sleep well. Good night, and may your dreams be as vast